Grace and peace be with you. Hi, my name is Mark. I'm the pastor at Sycamore Creek Church in Potterville, and I want to welcome you to our online worship today as we continue our series on the 3 simple rules by talking about building community. And speaking of building community, we have a connect question to start our worship service with. Take a moment and answer this. You can type your answer in the chat. And it's, what's a fun community event that you've enjoyed? We're just coming off here in Potterville, our Gizzard Fest. That was this past weekend. It was a wonderful event. When I think of a fun community event that I've enjoyed, I had to think a little bit because I'm trying to think of something that wasn't associated with our church. And one of the events that I've enjoyed is MSU's homecoming parade. Each fall, MSU has a homecoming parade where all the different clubs and all the different things that MSU does are on display in that parade. And my family has enjoyed going to that and participating in that celebration of Michigan State University each fall. How about you? What's a fun community event that you've enjoyed? As you think about that and reflect on that and answer that, we're going to turn it over to Kevin, who is going to lead us in some music.
Give me one pure and holy passion, and give me one magnificent obsession. Disciple in the truth. This world is empty, pale and poor, compared to knowing you, my Lord. Lead me on, and I will run after you. Lead me on, and I will run after you. Give me one pure and holy passion. Give me one magnificent obsession. Give me one glorious ambition for my life, to know and follow hard after you. To know and follow hard after you. To grow as your disciples in the truth. This world is empty, pale and poor, compared to knowing you, my Lord. Lead me on, and I will run after you. Lead me on, and I will run after you. To know and follow hard after you. To grow as your disciple in the truth. Empty, pale and poor, compared to knowing you, my Lord. Lead me on, and I will run after you. Lead me on, and I will run after you. Abide with me. Fast falls the eventide. The darkness deepens. Lord, with me abide. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, abide with me. I need thy presence every passing hour. What but thy grace can foil the tempter's power? thyself my guide and stay can be. Through cloud and sunshine, abide with me. I fear no foe, with thee at hand to bless. Ills have no way, tears lose their bitterness. Where is thy sting, death? Where grave thy victory? I triumph still, abide with me. Hold thou thy cross before my closing eyes. Shine through the gloom and point me to the skies. And morning breaks and earth-faint shadows flee. In life and death, Lord, abide with me. And morning breaks and earth's faint shadows flee. In life and death, Lord, abide with me.
Thank you, Kevin. Again, as I said, my name is Mark. I'm the pastor here at Sycamore Creek in Potterville. I'm thrilled you joined us for our online worship. We're continuing in our series today on 3 simple rules by talking about building community. And as we talk about building community, we're going to look to God as we do that. And as we look to God, we have a worship practice of lighting a candle. I'm going to light my candle here, and I'm going to invite you to light your candle at home. We look today to the light of that candle as we build community. Building community online, building community in person. The community that is the church is centered on Jesus. And that candle reminds us today of Jesus and God's presence with us as we worship. As we look to the community of Jesus today, I'm going to invite you to pray with me. Will you please pray with me? God, we thank you for your love for us. We thank you for your son, Jesus, sent to show that love toward us. And I pray, God, that you might encourage us, that you might empower us, that you might give us the boldness to engage other people and to do that well. Being a part of a community is difficult. People are challenging, and yet there's such great reward in it. God, help point us to the rewards and to the benefits of community, and help us to continue to reach out to one another in the difficulties of life, that we might be Jesus' body for each other. That we might help one another and encourage one another. We pray all of that in the name of Jesus. Amen. I'm going to invite you to continue praying with me and join me in the prayer that Jesus taught us, the Lord's Prayer. Let's pray that prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Today, as I mentioned, we are continuing in our series, 3 Simple Rules. We have Kevin Fitton with us. You just heard Kevin lead us in singing. Kevin is going to also be preaching today and talking about the 3 simple rules of building community. But first, here is our host for today.
Hi, my name is Jana and I'm your host for today. I'm also on the Kids Creek team and one of the leaders of the high school youth group, Team Fuel. Welcome to Sycamore Creek Church in Potterville. We are so glad you've joined us for worship. Please take a moment to fill out a connection card at sycamorecreekchurch.org/connection. We'll refer to that connection card later in the worship service. Connect with us for the first time and we'll send you a free book. Another way to connect with us is by chatting and commenting on the worship service. We would love to interact with you. If today's worship is helpful for you, take a moment and share it with your friends on social media. You can share the worship service and use our hashtag #SCCPotterville. Today's message begins with this.
When Rebecca and I first got married, we moved to Massachusetts so she could attend graduate school. And as you can see from the picture, we were 12 years old. Okay, I'm kidding. But we were 22 and 23, we were really young. And because we didn't know anyone in the entire state of Massachusetts, one of our first priorities was to make some friends. Fortunately, Rebecca was in graduate school and she started getting to know people in her program, and pretty soon we had a group of 4 young couples who were going to get together socially and work through a book on marriage together, and it would have been great if it wasn't terrible. Well, it wasn't really terrible, it wasn't really good either. There was one couple who argued a lot in front of everyone, and that was really awkward and uncomfortable. There was another member of the group who, when we were having our book study, would just shut down and stop talking and sit there really sullenly, and nobody knew why. It just didn't work, and eventually we had to stop meeting together. A couple of years later, we moved a couple towns over to another location and joined a new church. And at that church, we were asked to lead a small group for young couples. This, it turned out, was a real band of misfits. We had people from 5 different countries, including a woman named Elaine from Ireland, who is still one of the most sarcastic people I've ever met. Even though it was a couples group, we had a single guy from Sri Lanka who attended the group quite often. We had people with graduate degrees and high school diplomas. We had people who had money. Most of us at that point didn't have any money. We argued sometimes when we would go camping. We had disagreements about whether or not it was okay to burn plastic in the campfire. It's not. There was one person in the group that I had a hard time getting along with. 2 of the couples ended up getting divorced. We had our disagreements, but it ended up being one of the best experiences of community that I've ever had. This is a group of people who just truly looked out for one another. When someone had to move, which was often, it was a really expensive area, and we were all kind of looking for a better place to live and a better deal. I've never seen anything like it since. We would get an entire moving truck loaded up in less than an hour, sometimes approaching half an hour. If you showed up late to help someone move, it would be done. It was really incredible the way that we took care of one another. So here's what I take away from those experiences in Massachusetts. Community can be really great. It can be beautiful. It can also be really hard. It really takes a lot of work to develop a strong community, a shared group of people living life together. And that brings us to our first Chatterbox question. Have you ever tried to find community in a new place? Hello, my name's Kevin Fitton, and I am the worship leader at Sycamore Creek Church's Potterville campus and also a member of the teaching team. Today we are continuing our series, 3 Simple Rules, where we are looking at John Wesley's 3 Simple Rules for Spiritual Health, and we're applying it to different areas of our lives. Today I'm going to be applying John Wesley's 3 Simple Rules to the idea of building community. And the reason that we're doing this is because, as I've been saying, building community is hard. It takes work. And I believe Wesley's 3 Simple Rules can help us to find and maintain community, stronger community in our churches and throughout our lives. So what are Wesley's 3 Simple Rules? The first is to do no harm. The second is to do good. And the third is to stay in love with God. Okay, the first rule is to do no harm. Now let me ask you this. Which of you have ever caused harm to someone in your church community, in a social group that you're a part of, or in your work community? I hope a lot of you are raising your hands. I'm guessing a lot of you are raising your hands. And if you aren't, I'm wondering if maybe you're having a little bit of trouble with your memory. Because we all do this. We all cause harm. It's why it's Wesley's first rule. He's telling us, stop it. Stop hurting one another. But why? Why do people do this? Why do we cause harm to one another so often? Even people who really truly desire to do good and to be good in their lives. I want to turn together to Genesis chapter 4. This is the story of Cain and Abel. Now Abel kept his flocks and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. But Abel brought fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door. It desires to have you, but you must master it." Now Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out in the field." And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother and killed him. Why did Cain kill Abel? Abel didn't do him any harm. The issue, of course, is Cain's insecurity. He's made an offering. It's just an okay offering, while Abel has given from the very best of his flocks. And out of his jealousy and his insecurity, he lashes out. This is something that we all do. When we feel insecure, we seem to just want to cause harm to other people. A high school teenager sees a post on social media with all of their friends together at an event that they weren't invited to. What does the teenager do? Maybe she makes a post on social media and makes sure to leave someone else out so that they know what it feels like to have that experience. Maybe he brags about a test score when someone else next to him is struggling. A middle-aged man worries he's going to be passed over for a promotion in favor of a younger colleague. Out of frustration, he spreads a rumor about the competitor. An older woman feels ignored by her children. They just seem to have forgotten about her and her needs. Every time she talks to one of them on the phone or every time they're together, she makes sure to bring up the fact that she's lonely and that she's been disappointed and let down. And it makes everyone miserable. Why do we do this? Why, when we feel pain, does it make us want to cause harm to others? Well, when we feel insecure, left out, hurt, or ignored, we have an impulse to cause pain to someone else, to have them experience the same feelings that we've experienced. At least then they'll know what it feels like. Cain feels badly. He wants Abel to feel badly. Mission accomplished. There is an expression in the world of psychology: hurt people hurt people. The problem, though, is that hurting other people doesn't actually solve the problem or help us deal with our emotions. It only compounds the pain. So how can we respond to these experiences and these hurts in a healthier way? I have 3 suggestions for how we can respond to these feelings of insecurity and these hurts without perpetuating the pain that it's caused us. First of all, share your feelings of pain with someone that you can trust. This is just a different way of responding to what we're experiencing, a healthier way. Take it to a really close friend or maybe a therapist. Having those feelings recognized and validated by someone else can really help to ease that hurt and make us feel like we don't need to lash out at others. Second, you can respond by finding something positive to do. Now, I do want to add a disclaimer to this, which is that if you're in a community of people where a leader is abusing power or it's just a really ugly environment, it's probably the best to just get out of there and go somewhere else. But most of the time, the issues are personality conflicts or miscommunication or misunderstanding. And instead of being a gossip and complaining to someone else about a problem that you have with someone else, a much better way of dealing with the situation is to find a positive way to contribute to your community. You can address the situation by bringing about change. Maybe you can help with communication issues by offering to put together a better platform for communication. It's amazing what you can do by responding to a negative situation with a positive response. It's really surprising. And the third, healthier response is to entrust our self-worth to God. When we are hoping that other human beings are going to help us to feel good about ourselves and we are putting that in the hands of others, we're going to end up being disappointed and let down. But God is faithful. God is consistent with us. God believes deep in his heart that we are worthwhile. He's the one who created us. And God is so much more of a trustworthy and reliable source when it comes to finding our sense of self-worth. And it makes a huge difference if we are continually, through prayer, daily going to God, looking for him to be the one to give us a sense of who we are as human beings and our value. We're choosing instead to share our feelings of insecurity with a safe person. We're doing that instead of lashing out. We're choosing, in the context of a community of people, to do good, to help find solutions where there are problems with personality conflicts and communication. We're experiencing and expressing positive leadership instead of trying to make things worse. And instead of looking to others for our sense of self-worth, we're choosing to entrust that to God. Which brings us to our next discussion question. Which of these three ways that we can use to stop perpetuating harm are you most attracted to? The second of Wesley's rules is to do good in order to help build community. And I want to make this really simple because it is really simple. In order to do good to build community, The key is that we need to help and ask for help. That's the key, to help and ask for help. It has to be both. Either or doesn't work. One side of this coin is pretty easy to understand. If a person is always asking for help and taking help if they need, want, but they're never responding to other people's needs, that's an unbalanced approach to community. Now, of course, there are going to be times in our lives when we need more help. We've gone through a divorce or a job loss or experiencing, physical issues or a long-standing illness. And there are going to be seasons in our life when we're going to be receiving a lot more help than we're going to be able to offer to others. But of course, over time, it's really important that we are responding to other people's needs even as we're going through our own struggles. That's a part of being in community. The other side of the coin is an issue as well, though. If we are only offering help and never receiving help, we're not fully participating in community. On the surface, this might seem like a really good thing when a person is giving help and they're never receiving. But the thing is, everyone has needs. And if we're not willing to accept help from others, then we're rejecting community. We're saying to other people, I don't need you. And that's just as detrimental to community as the person who's always taking, the person who will never be willing to receive. Think about it this way. In nature, there are 3 ways in which species relate to one another. One of those ways is a parasitic relationship, where one species is taking advantage of another species. That species thrives while the other's suffering and dying for the sake of the species that's thriving. Then we have commensalism. And in commensalism, you have one species who is gaining from the relationship and another that's in a neutral stance. And then finally, we have mutualism. Mutualism is when 2 different species and all these organisms are participating in community. They're all gaining from the relationship. Now, what do we want our communities to be like of those 3 modes of relating to one another as species? We want to experience mutualism, right? And the only way that we can experience mutualism is if everyone is participating in that by helping and receiving help. Okay, so the key to doing good in community is to both help and receive help. It's really important that we are contributing to our community, that we're giving financially, that we're investing in relationships with other people in the community, and not just our best friends, that we're greeting guests and we're taking time to get to know people who are new to the community or who maybe haven't been reached out to by others. And it's also really vital that we're people who are receiving help, who are willing to be vulnerable enough to take part in community in that way, where we are giving and we are also accepting that support and help from others. In community, we learn to let down our guard. And that brings us to our 3rd Chatterbox question. Is it easier for you to be someone who is giving or receiving help? Finally, the third simple rule is stay in love with God. So how do we stay in love with God in community? Well, the key is that we do it in community. Even though community can be hard, even though some people burn plastic in the campfire or shut down awkwardly during a small group discussion, even though we hurt and get hurt in the context of community, being in community is a key to staying in love with God. In our society, one common approach to faith is to say, I'm spiritual but not religious. You've probably heard someone say this, maybe you've said this yourself. It's like saying me and God were good. And maybe part of that is because of politics and the history of the church and some of the other stuff that has to do with organized religion. But I also think a lot of what we're saying is that we want to have a spirituality that's personal because it's safer, because community is hard, because people are hard, and we just don't want to deal with it. Listen, I've had times in my life where I felt that way too, where I felt like I was pretty much done with church. But here's the reality. I honestly don't know how any person can successfully pursue God and stay in love with God outside of the context of community. I don't know how we can accomplish anything significant in our lives on our own. My primary vocation at this point in my life is as a writer. And I know that we have a stereotype about writers that it's this very solitary endeavor, that the writer heads off into a cabin in the woods and then they come out with this book. And certainly there are aspects of writing that are solitary. There are parts of it that we do on our own. But I can tell you that I have a book coming out this fall, and I recently wrote the acknowledgments page for my book. And it was amazing to realize as I was writing down the names of every person who helped me with this book that there were 20 people who had a direct impact on the work that I did, offering feedback and help and support in very practical ways so that this solitary work of writing could come together. It's a big project, and the truth is that it requires community. This is true of all the writers that I know. They have people around them who help them and support them in so many ways. Even in this very solitary art form, I don't know a single person who does that work on their own. And this is true even more so in the pursuit of following and staying in love with God. In the book of Hebrews, the writer makes this plea to people of faith. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. Notice how the writer makes this plea to stay in love with God, and then immediately follows that with a plea to stay in community, to not give up meeting together, to stick in there, even though sometimes it's hard. It's because it's vital that we have people around us, a community of people who will help us to stay in love with God. We have 2 teenage girls in our family, and I can tell you that being a teenager in the 2020s is hard. It's really challenging for our girls as they navigate the hallways of their schools and the pathways of friendship. We have a lot of young people over at our house, and we even took a group of 6 teenage girls to Florida with us for spring break this year, which was a little crazy. But one of the things that I often think about is what a huge advantage our kids have over some of their friends who don't have the experience of being in Christian community. And I've reflected on this a lot, especially since we came back from that trip. Through our church, they have friends with whom they share a lot of values, and they always have those relationships to fall back on. They also have this experience of gathering every week to talk about life and faith and relationship and how we can live lives that are full of vibrancy and life instead of darkness and despair. And I often wonder how hard it must be for some of the kids who don't have this experience of community, who don't have the kind of support that our teenagers do. We need it so badly. We need that kind of encouragement and care that we get in a church like ours. We need the wisdom for life that we find in the scriptures. And we need community that will help us to stay in love with God. I want to end today with a plea. If you're a person who has this kind of community, I encourage you to stay in it and to work at it, to work at, not causing harm in the context of that community and doing good, offering help and receiving help, even if that's hard for you to do. Being a person who helps to inspire others to love God more. Don't give up on it. It can be hard sometimes, but don't let it slip away. And if you don't have this kind of community, my encouragement is that you keep looking for it. Keep searching, because it's worth it. It's so important for us. I can't emphasize how significant it is to have this kind of precious experience of being with and walking with a group of people who together are pursuing God and seeking to stay in love with Him. Trust me, it's worth it. And that brings us to our final discussion question. When was a time when being a part of a community helped you to stay in love with God?
Thank you, Kevin. I have a couple quick announcements for us. The first announcement is that we would love to help you get connected here at Sycamore Creek. We'd love to help you take next steps that help you to grow in your faith. You can do that by filling out a digital connection card at sycamorecreekchurch.org/connection or by following the QR code that you see on the screen. If you do that for the first time, we have a free book that we'd like to send you. It's a book by Max Lucado called You'll Get Through This. We'll send that directly from Amazon right to your house. I also want to remind you that today is the last week. This is the last week, the last Sunday where you can sign up for a small group. For the past month, we've been in what we call a group link month, where we want to link you with a small group and get you connected with that. You can find a list of small groups and you can sign up for them at sycamorecreekchurch.org/small groups. A lot of those groups are starting. If you're a procrastinator, you've been waiting for the last minute, it's here. It's time to join a small group. Do it today. I also want to remind you that on Sunday, June 26th, we will be at Woldemar Nature Center for worship. We'll be in the barn having our baptism worship service. I'm super excited about this service. It's really inspiring to see people reaffirming their baptism, being baptized. I hope you'll come and be a part of that service at 10:30 a.m. That service will also be streamed online at 10:30. So if you're someone who usually worships with us online, a reminder that starting that Sunday, June 26th, worship will be at 10:30 a.m. online. And after worship, we'll have a potluck together. We'll share a meal as we celebrate together the baptisms that we just participated in worship. Bring a dish to pass, bring something to share with us, and enjoy a great meal together again on June 26th. I want to thank you for your giving to support the mission of Sycamore Creek. We couldn't do all the things that we do without you. We also really emphasize giving because it changes you and it has an impact on you. If you've not given before, I want to encourage you to consider taking that step and see if it doesn't have an impact on you and on your life. And speaking of your giving and the things that it can accomplish, last week in worship, we gave our second graders who are moving up to third grade a Bible from our church. I love this tradition of giving kids their first Bible. They're reading, they're able to engage now the stories of the Bible. I had so much fun talking to the parents as well about the community of Sycamore Creek and how as a community we celebrate and support parents as they are working to raise their kids to follow Jesus. The Bible and giving the kids a Bible is just one piece of that, along with all the other things we do to support kids and families. Thank you for your giving to Sycamore Creek that allows us to help kids to encounter Jesus. Here's Kevin with our final worship song.
Thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Summer and winter and springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses above, join with all nature in manifold witness to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Pardon for sin and a peace that endureth, thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me.
Thank you, Kevin. May you go this week and build community wherever you find people to build community with, and may that community point you to God. Have a great week. Hope to see you again soon.